Hey everybody, what's going on? Brian here with Mana Beast. Today I wanted to talk about something that has been circling around the Dragon Ball Z group for quite a while, and that's the new set 4 cards. If you haven't noticed, there's been a lot of drama surrounding it, the art direction, the cards, and a whole lot of the drama going on around about it. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about the subject because I think a lot of issues have gotten lost in translation, emotions get heated with people get mad about it, and so, all the good points are lost in the drama, and so I wanted to address them here. First, I want to talk about this in a little bit different context because I have been doing graphic design now professionally for 15 years, and I've always grown up and done art, done design. It's just been something I've been a part of along with a myriad of other things. And when we're talking about the set 4 cards, and primarily what people see as bad art or art that doesn't look good or it looks poorly done, we have to break it down really into two main components. There is the aesthetic component of the card. That's how it looks. That's colors, that's personal choices, it's whether you personally prefer how it looks. It's aesthetically pleasing. Does it look pleasing to the eye? But then there's the mechanical design, which has less to do about does it look pretty or does it look cool, and more about where things are placed. How, when you play the card, how when you look at the card, how you interact with it, where things are placed to make it easy for your eye to find key elements. Those are basic building blocks of how the card is designed. And I wanted to make very strict differentiations between the two of those because they are very different, very, very different aspects of the cards. Let's talk about first the aesthetics of the card, which to me, I look at the set 4 cards and I'm not a fan of the aesthetics. If we're talking about the background elements, some of the color choices, especially the imagery in this set. I've seen a lot of the imagery in past sets, sets 1, 2 in the movie set, and the sets they select for imagery, I know there's some sort of process they have to go through, red tape, as you do with any licensed product. In fact, at my current job, I work with a lot of licensed products, and you have to go through red tape. I'm not faulting them for that, and they may only have a limited availability of options for image selection, but I look at it and I look at some of the cards and I go, is that really the best image you have for it? Because either it doesn't work well with the name of the card or the image itself is really weak. Also, some of the choices they make in how things look, especially when you look at the text boxes, it used to be, instead of a big glaring white box, they filled up the space better, and there are a lot of just dead spaces in the card which bother me. I either like space that's properly used or space that has a good flow to it, and in a lot of these, the text, it seems to take up part of the text box sometimes and leaves this huge, vast, unknown white area that, I don't know, looks really poor in my opinion. Besides the aesthetics, which I could go on, and I know really people have talked about a lot, the main thing I wanted to talk about is the mechanical design of the card, because that to me is more important than the aesthetics of the card. It's the functionality of the card. It's how the card mechanically works. And of course, one of the aspects that has bothered a lot of people is the new orientations of setups and drills. If you don't know, setups and drills are now orientated horizontally instead of vertically as they were in the old sets. And a lot of people are bothered by it, but some people aren't, and it's less about the aesthetics of it and more of mechanically how it works. Meaning, when you have a drill or a setup out on the field, especially with ones from set 1, 2 in the movie collection, and then you put this setup or drill that's horizontal, it may not seem like a big deal, but it really is. And it goes back to a core mechanic found in a lot of card games, which is tapping cards. Now, I know that tapping isn't necessarily a officially sanctioned device within the Dragon Ball Z card game. However, when I've played locally, when I've gone to tournaments out of town, when I've gone to regionals, most any event I go to, I would say a solid 90% or a majority of people, when they are using drills and they want to say, I've used this drill, especially with blocking drills in orange, they're going to tap the cards. They're going to take the card and then they are going to turn it at a 90-degree angle to denote that it's been used, which is the easiest way to show that the card's been used. Super simple. Other card games do this. It's a common mechanic in Magic. It's a common mechanic in Vanguard when attacking with units. Again, it denotes that it's been used so that later on down the road you're not confused. So although it's not something that is sanctioned by Panini or in the game, it is a commonplace mechanic used by card game players over a wide variety of card games for the past few decades. With that in mind, I wish the designers would have thought about that, because from a usability standpoint, when you're designing something, you have to think about the real world application. How do people use this? How does a common person using this card use it? And I would think that within the circles of Panini, somebody had to have thought, well, you know, when you are using a drill or you are using a setup and you want to denote it's been used, you're going to tap it, you're going to turn it, you're going to change the orientation of the card. What that does now, though, is it adds a layer of confusion to the card game, which didn't need to be there in a tournament. Because in a tournament, when you're playing, the last thing you want is extra added confusion. So, for instance, now, if I have an orange drill that is from set 1, 2 of the movie collection, and I tap it to denote it's been used, it goes from what is normally a vertical orientation to a horizontal one. But now vice versa, I use one of the drills from set 4, and I tap it, now I change it to a vertical orientation instead of horizontal. So now when you look at my board, just looking at the cards, without looking at the actual design or what they do, your eye is denoting what has been used and what hasn't. And now, mid-game, you have to look at those cards and think, okay, wait, this is a set 4 drill, this one has been tapped, meaning it's vertically aligned, whereas the set 1, 2, and movie collection drill has been tapped horizontally, so now I know it's been used. It might not sound like a lot, but coupled with what they've done with the masteries now, old masteries, especially like with blue, anytime I wanted to say that I've used my mastery's power to discard a physical or an energy to guard an attack, I would always tap the mastery. I would turn it, it would denote that I've used it, and I can't use it anymore, especially in a long battle. Now, you couple that with drills and setups, I'm not saying it's the end of the world. What I am saying now is it leads to confusion. It leads to extra time in a game. And if you add that up in a game, if you add that up time after time, drills, setups, masteries, checking to see what has and hasn't been used, that time adds up. And that time is valuable to playing a game. The more confusion you add in, the more extra elements that have to be translated from one player to the other, again, adds to the time, adds unnecessary complexity in a game which can get rather complex, especially in the late stages of the game. This brings me then into the actual aesthetic, mechanical design of the cards. And if we look at the new cards, really my main issue is a lot to do with the text and how it's been placed. With the old cards, they did a better job placing text within the text box that would fill the space and become easy to read, giving your eyes place to rest. So when you're reading the text, you don't feel it's too crowded, but also it doesn't feel like it's just floating in space. You'll notice these borders on the side of where the text box is. I don't know why those are there. I would have wished they would have just continued to expand the text box all the way to the edges. I don't know if it's a design flair. It only, to me, adds more visual mess where I think there could be just more clarity instead. A lot of the elements on the cards also switch places on different cards for no reason whatsoever. Like endurance sometimes will be on the right side, whereas the logo denoting the set 4, the red ribbon logo, will be on the left. Sometimes it'll be switched around, it'll be in different places. And that's also key when playing a card game. When you're playing with a card, it's really important to know where key elements are at all times. So when you're in the middle of a match and you're playing a game, your eye is automatically going to go to that spot in the card and go, okay, how much endurance is this? What does it do? What are the effects? And now that we're switching orientation, we're randomly switching placement of design elements on cards between sets and even between cards in the same set. Again, we're adding complexity into the game. So when I'm looking at a card now and I'm going to try to find endurance on the right side, well, instead it's on the left side, again, my mind has to switch. I have to go, wait a second, okay, now look to the left. Okay, that's the... It doesn't seem like a lot, but as you all know, when you're doing any kind of task, when you're distracted, or when your mind has to switch from figuring out where it's at to going, okay, now it's over here, again, it adds confusion, it adds extra complexity. I also didn't prefer what they used for their font. The font is, not only is it not that interesting to look at, sometimes it's hard to read. I know they're trying to denote and separate differences, whereas in old cards, everything was ran together. I like that they tried to delineate differences. For example, if it's an energy attack, what it does, what the on-hit effect is. Now they're separated out, but now it almost feels like it's too separated out. There's too much space between lines, and because they're now separating things, they've had to make their text boxes much bigger to allow for some of those cards that have huge effects or huge on-hit effects with long explanations to fit. Again, this brings us to other cards which don't have much text, now having just a huge amount of white space for no reason at all other than, well, they have a huge amount of white space. I myself, as you might have seen on some of the message boards and on Facebook, created a new version of the card, of the set 4 card, with design principles that I felt would better mechanically work. And as you can tell, I've got it up here and kind of showing you the difference between the two of them. I feel it works a lot better for a lot of reasons. Imagery, again, is much bigger in the card. I feel that it takes up more space and is given more importance, which to me, it's a collectible card game. I want to collect these cards. I want to see the images on the cards. I enjoy collecting them, not just playing them. So there is an aesthetic pleasure that is also mixed with a mechanical one. And that's why I feel in set 4 there was a bit of a failure in how Panini actually executed the design of the cards. And that's why myself and a lot of the players are bothered by it. Is it going to change me playing the game? Is it going to ruin the game? I don't think so. I looked at the cards' effect as far as how they work and the effects of the cards, the new personalities, the new masteries. There's a lot of good possibilities going into set 4. In fact, I'm really excited about set 4 because now we have new masteries, we have new MPs, and we have new cards. So the combinations now are going to be quite diverse from what they used to be. And now you can run one type of, say, Goku Saiyan one way, and it is mixed with different personalities from the original set and set 4, and maybe a different mastery, and you've got 2 different Saiyan masteries that all work differently. So the combinations and the diversity in the game, I think, are going to grow exponentially. However, I do think they missed an opportunity to design the cards better. And that's really my main gripe. I don't see why they redesigned everything. I understand it's evolution. They want a new look. But the key principle that I've learned as a designer over these past 15 years is ask yourself, what's the goal? What is the purpose of doing something? And I look at the purpose of redesigning the cards, and I don't see an inherent design principle behind redesigning them. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't look at the cards from set 1, 2 in the movie collection and see glaring issues that need to be readdressed. Magic is an example of a card game that has perfectly redesigned or updated the look of cards to look a little bit more modern while still retaining the classic feel of the original alpha sets. That is what I think Panini should have done. If they felt they wanted to update things, if they felt they wanted to make it a little bit better, do that. That's fine, but still keep them, for the most part, similar to the old cards, because if it doesn't need to change and there's no real design principle behind why it's changed or from a mechanical gameplay standpoint, it feels like to me they just changed it because they wanted to change it. And that, in my opinion as a designer, is not the right way to go about designing cards. So those are my thoughts on why the new set 4 cards aren't exactly my favorite from both an aesthetic and a mechanical design perspective. But what are your thoughts? What do you think of the new cards? Why do you like or dislike them? Am I wrong on this, or is there something I missed? Then post in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you guys. As always, thank you fine people for watching, and we'll see you next time.